I always tell newer investors, doing more deals leads to doing more deals, and doing more private lending leads to more private lending.
Welcome to the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Axel Ragnarsson, and on this show, I dissect how seasoned multifamily investors started, built, and scaled their businesses. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. Joining me this week is an investor named Kyle McCorkle, who is based in Pennsylvania, and he's an investor who's built a portfolio consisting of small multifamily properties, and he's also an active house flipper as well. And this is going to be a great episode for the folks who are looking to, really start building the early stages of their portfolio and who want to start buying 2 to 6 unit multifamily properties by themselves or maybe with a partner or something like that. But folks that are a little bit earlier in their journey who are looking to begin building their portfolio. And in this episode, we talk all about how Kyle got his business off the ground, why he still flips properties, even though his goal is to continue to buy and hold, and what he looks for in a rental property. We also talk about how he's working with private money lenders and how he structured his partnership with his business partner, who used to be his GC, and then they actually created a business partnership within their business. And this is actually really interesting. And we both share many, many comments for listeners who are looking to either find a business partner or structure a partnership, and talk about what to look out for, how you need to think about structuring partnerships and all of that. And Kyle is also the man behind the Real Life Rentals blog, which is a blog he's been writing for 6 years now. And it's really, really interesting. It's probably the most transparent I see anyone being online about the operations in their business. And I spent, about an hour or so reading through it before we recorded the episode, and I was just stunned at the level of transparency that that Kyle is, basically all the information that he's willing to share and how transparent he's willing to get in terms of what he shares about his business. So we talk about the benefits of starting that blog, how it's helped him meet other investors, find private money lenders, etc., and why just telling your story online can be so critical for investors who are looking to grow their business. So this is a great episode. Kyle's a really relatable guest who has, built a nice portfolio just from scratch organically. And it's a nice change of pace in terms of, being complementary to a lot of the guests we have on the show that have built portfolios of, in the hundreds of millions of dollars that are thousands of units in size. So bit of a different episode. And I think it speaks to a different segment of our audience. So really excited to release this episode. And if you haven't already, please leave the podcast a rating and review, as it helps the show get noticed by more folks. But again, thank you for listening. And let's get to this episode with Kyle McCorkle. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here on the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. Joining me this week is Kyle McCorkle, who is a buy and hold investor, somebody who has a lot of experience flipping homes as well. He writes the Real Life, I should say he started the Real Life Rentals blog and regularly writes on his blog as well. And I think it's a really, really interesting site. I was perusing through it, Kyle, before we hopped on here. And the level of transparency that you just have there and what you share is really, really interesting. So I know we're going to talk about that, but you got your hands on a lot of things. Why don't we start with your background and maybe how you found real estate, how you get into the business, and what you're up to now?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me on. I was born and raised in Hershey, Pennsylvania. That's where I'm at right now. I went to Penn State, majored in industrial engineering, met my wife there. She is also an industrial engineer. And then we left college and kind of went into the real world. And I personally went into consulting, and I was traveling Monday through Friday every single week, and I was just gone, all the time. So was with my girlfriend at the time, and then we got married, and then she started talking about having kids, and I was like, I do not want to be living this lifestyle once we start popping out kids. So kind of started to do some soul searching and thinking about what the future looks like. And I knew I wanted to be home, but I wasn't very excited about getting like a quote unquote normal job close to home, and just kind of started looking into other ways to make money, and I was like, well, how can I make money while doing the least amount of work, and just kind of wasn't. I'm not sure I knew what passive income was at the time, but that's basically what I was looking for. I was like, wow, how can I develop some passive income? So that led me into real estate. Just started reading a ton of books, listening to a ton of podcasts. Probably did that for about a year, and then I jumped in and just started buying properties.
Gotcha. And in terms of where you started that journey, I'm assuming it was maybe was it the fix and flip side? Did you jump right into looking for rentals? Like, how did you start your business? How did it evolve, after you started it as well, in terms of, where it's gone since then?
Right. So it's kind of evolved, I think, backwards from what you hear about from most people. So my wife and I were both engineers, both making really good money from our W-2s. We could also get really good loans because of our W-2s. So my first property was a 4-unit, and it was a 4-unit rental, and I was just going to buy it and hold it. And so that was pretty much my model for the first couple of years. Is I was working hard and I was still traveling, and I was just, we saved a lot of money, and we would just save money and put down a down payment on the next property. That was the only way we knew how to buy property at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the way that I've kind of morphed, like I said, it's kind of backwards. I still love buy and hold. Like, that's still the end goal. But so I ended up stepping away from consulting in 2019. We had our second kid by then, and so I was ready to be done. And so I stepped away from consulting, went into real estate full time. And I guess kind of the way I looked at it was, I was using all my W-2 income to buy more properties. And then when I left the W-2, I needed a different way to generate, chunks of cash to buy more buy and hold properties. So that's when I started flipping.
Mm-hmm.
And so plus I had more time. So kind of the way I look at it is, flipping and then later wholesaling has become my new, like, quote unquote W-2, to generate that extra cash to then invest into more buy and hold properties.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I had a similar journey myself, where it started on the multifamily side, or on the rental side, right? Buying these small multifamily properties that were 2, 3, 4, 5 units. And then you run out of money, especially if you jump in and you start doing it full time. And it's hard to keep growing I should say, grow that portfolio, keep the snowball building, and et cetera, without figuring out a way to bring some money back into the business. And my solution to it was just selling some of the earlier properties and repurposing some of the cash, and just opting to sell some of the multis that we were buying, instead of buying and holding, buying, refi, and holding. We just buy, add value, and sell. But we never really went the flipping route. So when you did start going that route, how did you start building that side of the business? Did you start going direct to seller? How were you finding deals? And how was that different from the multifamily side, in terms of, maybe your approach to that, right? Maybe in regards to your time investment, the scopes of those projects, et cetera. So I guess talk to me about how that entry went into the world of flipping houses, and how you got that part of your business off the ground.
Yeah, so you know what? I think it kind of everything grew out of searching for buy and hold properties. Because back in 2019, I was still willing to buy single family rentals. I pretty much transitioned out of that pretty quickly. But I was just looking for good deals, and at the time, that was when I had first done my first couple burrs on some single families. And so I was just looking for good deals on any property, single family, 2-unit, 3-unit, 4-unit, doesn't matter. I'm just looking for good deals. So I'd be out there looking for good deals, and I'd find, maybe, for example, a single family that the ARV is higher, and the rent to value ratio on that ARV isn't as good. So it's not going to cash flow after you refi. So I was looking at it as, well, I could keep it as rental and make, $50 a month, or I could sell it and make $50,000 and then take that $50,000 and buy a 4-unit with it or something. So it was really just like, hey, let's look for awesome deals and then figure out what to do with it. Some of them make more sense as a flip. Some of them make more sense as a rental. And then eventually, a couple of years later, I started learning how to wholesale. And then some of them made more sense. Hey, we don't want to flip here. We don't want to buy and hold here for whatever reason. Maybe we're too busy with other stuff that we're doing. So then I would just wholesale it.
100%. Yeah. Now let's talk about let's talk about the rental side in terms of how you've grown that over the years and maybe what that side of the business looks like. Is the model for you still, let's flip to generate some money and then we'll use, our own cash, our own resources to go out there and buy rentals? Or have you started doing anything with partners or, raising private money, anything like that? Or has the strategy remained pretty consistent over the last, few years?
Multiple things there. So in 2019, when I went full time and I had multiple projects going on, I was kind of being the GC. And I ended up, one of the contractors that was working for me. He is younger. He's, close to my age, just very similar values. But he was good at just getting stuff done. And I was the one who was bringing in the deals. And so we just kind of got to talking, and I found out that he wanted to buy properties too. So we've been partnered for the last 4 years, and he just does all the work. He does all the rehab work, I should say, and then he also does the property management. And then I'm finding the deals, and then I'm finding the finances. So to answer your question, that that's where some of the equity has come from, because when we started out, we each put in a certain amount of cash into the business. And then, as you start to do flips, do burrs, and you got multiple projects going on at once. Some of the burrs were not able to get all of our money back, so we got money tied up in projects. So we had to use private lending pretty quickly there once we started growing. So so as far as equity, I'm 50-50 with my partner. And then we have a pretty solid group of private lenders. For example, I just bought a flip a couple days ago, and it was fully funded by a private lender.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. I want to dive into how you've structured the partnership with your partner, right? Who was previously a GC. And so we're going to get to that for sure. But let's start with, let's stay on the private money side. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. I should probably ask them one at a time, but I kind of want to lump them in here in terms of, maybe where you find private lenders, maybe where you found some of your, initial private money lenders, the first ones that you started working with. What do they charge you? And is the game plan to, buy something? Obviously, if you're flipping it, there's an exit, right? You're going to sell it in 6 months, 9 months, however long it takes you to do the project. But on the rental side, is the goal to refinance them out in a year? Do they stay in the deal longer? So I guess to recap, where you find them, what do they typically charge you? And, how do you actually work with them in terms of structuring the loans?
Yeah, when you first hear about private lending, I know for me, I was just a little intimidated, I guess, and just didn't really know, well, like, who would ever want to lend me that much money, So my first private lender was my dad. And I treated it really when I went into it, I was like, Dad, like, I know, like, obviously you're my dad and we trust each other, but I want to make sure that we are properly documenting this and kind of going through all the steps, because really he was my guinea pig. And I was like, hey, I'm going to prove the concept with my dad, with someone who trusts me 100%, and I'm going to make sure that I treat him right. So my dad, I think he went on my first 2 burrs, and it was super conservative though. It was like it was like, I bought these single family houses for like, 40,000 or something like that. And I used my own money to buy it. And then I got a private loan for my dad for like 30,000,
Yeah.
just to fix it up. And
Pretty
then,
casual, just like, we got an email down. This is how I'm going to pay you. Or, we write it on a piece of paper or something pretty
yeah,
casual. Yeah.
yeah. And then when I refied, they were worth, a hundred. And then I would refi and just pay them back. And then whatever money was left over, I'd pay him back easily, right? Because he's like 30% loan to value, but and then I'd pay myself back. But maybe I put 50 into the property and I'm pay him back, and then I get 45 back. So I'm left with 5 in the deal,
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first one. And then it's like I always tell newer investors, doing more deals leads to doing more deals, and doing more private lending leads to more private lending.
Yeah.
So it's just it was all just kind of word of mouth from there. And then it was, oh, this other investor that I met who's 20 years older than me, and doesn't want to really be as active, but he has a lot of capital. Oh, well, he wants to lend to me, and then my brother wants to lend to me, and my friend from college wants to lend to me, and my cousin wants to lend, and it's, I've never actually had to ask people, because they just ask me, where are you coming up with all this money? And I'm like, well, some of it's mine, some of it's my partner's, and then I do this thing called private lending, and I pay people 12%.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, that sounds awesome. And then you got certain people who, even though I don't consider it them investing in real estate, I consider it them investing in me. But some people, they view that as investing in real estate, and it kind of gives them a feeling like, oh, this is kind of cool.
100%. Yeah. And I think what's certainly interesting is that you don't know how quickly this whole business snowballs or compounds until you're doing all of these different things. And I like how you phrase it, right? Deals lead to more deals. Working with private money lenders leads to working with more private money lenders. But oftentimes after you do a few deals, or you work with a few investors or lenders, however they're giving you money, there's the referral network starts to kick in, and they start telling the people they know, they start telling their coworkers. The next thing you know, there's money coming to you without you necessarily having to ask for it, which is obviously the ideal place to be in when you're in this business.
Right.
Now let's I'm going to get a little tactical with you here, just in case there's somebody listening who has never raised any private money. We've used a ton of private money in our business, right? That's really how I got my business off the ground, similar to you. And it was all kinds of different, we did all kinds of different things. Similar to you, we had like, just personal loans where it was like maybe for some renovations. We were doing, first position mortgages, kind of traditional private money lending on a piece of property. We did some second mortgage stuff. Yep. So now let's call it 2023 in your business now. If you're working with private money lenders, how do you typically work with them? How are they secure? Are they lending to you personally with some kind of guarantee? Do they have a lien against the property? Is it recorded a title? Like, how do you actually do all of this stuff? And maybe, if there's any tips in there for folks that haven't worked with a private money lender before, how they actually structure a deal with one the first time they do it.
Yeah. So I've done it a couple different ways, and the individuals who I'm working with, they're not doing this with anybody else. It's just me. So, and it's not what they choose to charge me. I just say, hey, this is what I'm paying. And they're pretty happy with 12%. And I'm happy,
which is great. I mean, I'm interrupting you, and I apologize, but for the listener, right? 12%, it's a really solid rate for private money lending. But anyways, continue.
I'm happy with it because I'm not paying them points. Because I know my alternative is hard money, and maybe hard money might be at 11 or maybe 10. Maybe not these days, but I know when they charge points, that's going to make it more expensive. So that's the nice thing about dictating the terms, with your friends and family, and then eventually you'll move past the friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, so like this flip that we just did. So I've worked with this guy multiple times. He's one of the, he's not like a friend or family. He's just like another investor who I crossed paths with maybe 5 years ago. I bought a property from him. He bought a property from me. And then I think I wholesaled him a property. Yeah, I did. And then he's lent me money multiple times. So, I mean, it gets so like, I'm not trying to brag, but it just like, it gets so easy
Mm-hmm.
because for this last one, I just texted him and I knew what he wanted to know. I just said, hey, I'm buying a property for 79,000. I'd like a loan upfront for 85,000 to cover closing costs. And I think we're gonna put 40,000 into it, and I think it's gonna be worth 180, and the project should take 3 months. And oh, by the way, same terms that we've always done.
Mm-hmm.
And he like didn't even ask any questions. He just texted back. He's like, okay, when do you
Yeah.
need the money? And then you were asking about liens and stuff like that. So that kind of depends. I usually ask people, I say, hey, do you want to invest in like a project and then get your money back? Or do you want to invest in my business? And so I say, the benefit of investing in my business is I'm not going to pay you back in 4 months and then wait for another deal and then, do that deal and then pay you back again. Like there's going to be less back and forth. It'll just be, you're always invested and you're always making 12%. So if they're investing in a deal, then I do the lien. So like this guy, we wrote up a mortgage, wrote up a note. And then he does have a first position lien on that house. But then I've done it with others where they're just like, no, like I want to invest in you and your business. And that's just an unsecured loan. It's a one pager. It's super simple. And I just pay them 12%. And for that, it depends, it could be, let's say they lend me 100,000. It doesn't matter where it goes. It just goes into my business account and I'll have 50,000 in this flip and, maybe 50,000 renovating these apartments,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I refi those apartments, then I'm going to keep that money and roll it into the next one.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. So it's, you can do the traditional private money lending of recording a mortgage against the deed and against the property, right? And your title company can draft up those documents and, handle that as part of the closing. Or you can go the route of, basically by investing in your business, they're really investing in you, right? At some capacity, right? It's like a personal relationship. Maybe there's some kind of personal guarantee or, in terms of how it's structured, but that's almost like working capital for the business, which just happens to also be going in there and renovating projects, flipping projects. And the payback of that loan is not necessarily tied to the completion of a deal. It's at your discretion, right? I would imagine.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting structure. Yeah.
What I do is I'll put 12 months on it, but I'll say, this can be extended if both parties, are okay with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is certainly a really casual way of putting them together comparatively to if somebody's going out there to a lender that they don't have like a personal relationship with or have known for a long time. And this is just commentary for everyone who's tuning in, but I probably would, it's really hard to start with that relationship unless, friend, family, close acquaintance, what have you, somebody that trusts you implicitly, that knows you personally. You're probably gonna have to start on a deal by deal basis. And then maybe that's a conversion you can make with a lender that you have a great experience with. But certainly a great structure because it allows you some more flexibility. Now I do want to transition to the partnership that you've structured with, with your partner who's handling all of the GC work and the management. So, obviously you mentioned the different roles, right? You are marketing, acquisitions, putting together the money. He's over there working on renovating the apartments and managing them in the future.
Yep.
Is there and if these two questions are a little too, I guess, personal, feel free to deflect. I have no problem with that. But in
No,
terms
it's
of,
fine. I mean, you've seen my website. I pretty much
it's
share
true.
share everything.
You're pretty open, yeah. So I'm curious because there's obviously a lot of different. You guys are doing a lot of different jobs, right? If you were to
Yep.
think about individual roles, right? Uh, Working on apartments as a GC, that's a role that a vendor could fill, right? Doing property management, that's a role that a vendor could fill. You know, you're helping to source the debt, put together the money. That's something a mortgage broker could theoretically
Hmm.
fill, right? So when you put together this partnership, was it just a casual, we're going to be spending roughly the same amount of time, so therefore we both get, 50-50 ownership? Is he getting paid as a GC as well, or earning some kind of management fee for doing the management? Or is it just, this is my side of the house, that's your side of the house, we cut it down the middle? Because I think this is a conversation that's going to be really helpful for folks that are listening, because a lot of people want to partner, but we don't know how
Absolutely.
to structure this stuff.
Yeah, that is such a fantastic question.
Yeah.
So when we first got started, first of all, I'll say we didn't really know what we were doing.
Yep.
But we're both just kind of very open about what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. And honestly, we were both not necessarily skeptical of the other person, just skeptical of partnership in general. So we wanted to make sure that we were both going to feel taken care of. So basically through multiple conversations, it started with, well, what if we just split everything 50-50?
Mm-hmm.
And then to your point, it became, well, what if there's a project that needs a lot of GC, that's a whatever $300,000, rehab, and all Kyle has to do is call up or text the private lender, hey, I need money, and then my partner spends half his life at this property. And then it was like, well, what happens if we get like one of these quick flips that like he doesn't have to spend a lot of time on? We whatever, just clean it up and put 5,000 into like whatever, cleaning up and staging. But like whatever, spend all this time and money finding the deal and working with the seller, and then selling it. So anyways, we basically came up with like a fee structure. So, and then we have it all written down, and this has changed because the exact numbers that we pay each other, we were just kind of picking numbers out of thin air and just seeing if it stuck. But yeah, so if we do let's say it's $100,000 rehab, he's gonna make a construction fee on that. So that's like a 20%, construction fee, and he gets paid that after the deal gets either sold or refied.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm gonna make a acquisitions fee. So that's basically I'm kind of like wholesaling it to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So he has his construction business, and his construction business gets paid the GC fee, and then I have my wholesaling business, and that gets paid the acquisitions fee. And then for our buy and holds, he gets paid as a property manager, and then I actually get paid as a asset manager.
Okay.
And then for properties that we sell, usually I'm the one who's selling. I just got my real estate license, by the way. But I make a dispositions fee for selling properties as well. So we pay our fees, we pay all of our other expenses, obviously, and then whatever's left over gets split 50-50.
No, and that's a great way to structure it, because I think, at least in my experience personally, in terms of partnerships that I've structured with, folks, which is usually on a deal by deal basis. I don't have any partners at like the business level, but I do joint ventures with a lot of different folks. So we partner, individually on deals. And so this is what I've learned in doing that, but also what I've seen in terms of other people I know in the business, just other investors, partnerships that fail or have some kind of dissension. It's usually tied back to one partner doing more work or spending more, just hours, more time, thinking that they're making more value, but being compensated in a very simplified way. Right. And usually that's where that challenge comes from, right? And I think it happens. So there's so many folks, right? I see so many people that get into this business. I mean, we're both younger guys. Like I got into this in my early 20s, and I saw people around me, young investors, get into the business that just partnered with their friend because it was like convenient. They just didn't want to do it alone. Oh, me and my buddy are going to go buy rentals, and all right, I'll go. I'll do the deal stuff. You do the management, and then it's like next thing you know, the guy who's doing the management, he feels like he should be compensated more because he's not earning a fee because they didn't define the value of that work. Anytime a partner is doing work in a partnership that can be removed and replaced by a vendor, you can assign a value to that work. It's the market is telling you there's literally a value for that work. But they might be getting mad because they're doing all this management. They think that they should be getting compensated more. Maybe they're not thinking about it that way.
Right.
And the guy who's out there finding the deals thinks it's like, hey, finding the deals is the hardest part. I should be compensated more. And they both think that they should be making more. There's all this dissension, and then the partnership kind of blows up and they go their separate ways. Right. So I think what you described is great, where if you guys are going to be doing the things that vendors can do, but you're getting paid as if you were a vendor, but you also just happen to be business partners, that's a great structure. So I wanted to call that out because I think there's a lot of ways to do it wrong. There are a lot of ways to do it in a way that endangers the partnership, but that's certainly not it.
And we didn't start as friends. I mean, he was my contractor. Did we get along? Did we enjoy being around each other? Yes. But I mean, we started out as, he was working for me, And I mean, is my partner my friend now? Well, yeah. I mean, because we spent so much time together over the last 4 years. So, but that's not the way we started. It was like, hey, I have my own personal goals. You have your own personal goals. It just kind of so happens that they're similar. You have a different skill set from me. Hey, let's write this up and let's do this together.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think that the best partnerships I've seen have been where people slowly enter them and where they didn't start as friends. That's my personal experience. I'm not indicting anybody that's friends with, or business partners with their friends, because I work with plenty of people who have created unbelievable business partnerships with close friends of theirs. But I think in general, there's more likelihood for dissension there because you're not as willing to have the difficult conversations with someone you're personally close to.
Right.
I have no interest in like starting, long-term business partnerships with like close family or friends, unless we have done an absurd amount of due diligence on each other and how we want to approach the business. And, because for me, there's just too many complications. But alternatively speaking, the partnerships that arise from, we work together professionally already in a great capacity, and we have extraordinarily complementary skill sets, and it's based in logic in terms of how the decision's made. Those are usually the really successful ones, at least in terms of what I see. But
right.
But anyways, we'll switch gears here because I want to make sure that we can talk about your blog, which again, I kind of led the show with saying you're extraordinarily transparent with what you share in there, as you just mentioned yourself as well. Just incredible level of detail, incredible insight into exactly what's going on behind the scenes within your business and your portfolio, down to like, income numbers and principal pay down and here's the good, here's the bad, etc. I got to imagine you spend a ton of time on this, as somebody who creates content myself, it's not without a significant time investment. So let's start here. Why did you decide to start that blog? Yeah. And, what was your vision for it, in terms of why you started? What did you want to get out of it? And, maybe how is it serving your business now?
Yeah. So I would say, when I started it years ago, I mean, I had, I was only a couple years in, probably only had like, I don't know, 4 or 5 properties.
Can you define the year for us in terms like 2017, 18,
I want to
something
say
like
it was 27 or
Okay.
2017 or 2018.
Gotcha.
So I was putting time and money into all these rental properties, and I wanted to basically prove to my wife that this actually makes money. Because I would say, oh, we had a really good month last month. And she'd be, okay, good. And I'd say, oh, we had a really bad month. and she'd be like, well, I keep hearing we have a good month, we have a bad month, we have a good month, we have that. Are we actually making money? And I'm like, oh yeah, like the bank account's going up. And she's like, well, which rentals are doing better than which are the good rentals and which are the bad rentals? And I'm like, I don't know. So both of us being engineers, I put together a nice spreadsheet to show her all that detail, and to show her, hey, we are going to have some bad months, but 9 or 8 months out of 10, it's actually pretty good. So that's kind of where the spreadsheet started. And then, and it was kind of around the same time I was looking into private lending, right? So I was still kind of dipping my toe in there. And a lot of the private lenders, they were asking questions about the numbers of the deals, and I was sharing with them the same spreadsheet. So then that kind of evolved into, well, let's just throw this onto a website and do like a monthly update. And I was sending it to 10 different people who might want to lend me money, and then it kind of just grew from there. And then it was, hey, I'm meeting other local investors through this website, or I'm meeting someone who wants to get started, and they're looking for someone to wholesale them a deal, or someone who is looking to they're an older investor and they're looking to sell a property. So it's kind of just kind of putting myself out there and saying, like, hey, this is my goal, this is what I'm going for. And then other like-minded people will kind of get drawn in. And it's a good way to really establish trust with those people. So people will follow me for months or even years, and then they'll reach out and they'll be like, hey, I'm ready to invest. And I'm like, dude, like I've never talked to you, but sure, let's talk. So I think it's just a good way to just kind of share my journey, but then also establish a good level of trust and credibility.
No, that's great. I mean, that's the benefit of just telling your story online, right? Is you're just opening yourself up to a wider pool of folks that could potentially work with you or bring you value, whether it's deals, money, contacts, vendors, what have you. I mean, it's the same thing that's happened in our business, right? Just a different conduit. I got active on Instagram, started the podcast, and not technically a blog, but if you just start saying what you're doing in public, start telling your story, you naturally just become a magnet for the folks that are doing the same thing. Now, I have to ask this question because I'm personally curious, right? My approach to sharing online is I do share. I do maintain a significant level of transparency in terms of, like, hey, if we get whacked on a deal, I want to come on this podcast and tell everybody, here's what we did wrong, here's what I learned, and don't make these mistakes, right? Now, as it relates to numbers, I do share a lot of numbers, but I'm not as transparent as you are, right? And I think what maybe stops me from getting there is it's probably a few things, right? It's probably like, fear of judgment is one. 2 is like some kind of personal, discretion. And 3, there's a fear too, as you start buying, multifamily buy and hold, your tenants can look you up, right? They can see, oh, they're making this, how did you become comfortable with the level of transparency that you've, seemingly embraced in terms of what you share? Was that a process? Have you received positive feedback from being that transparent? I mean, this is a selfish question, but maybe it applies to folks listening as well.
Yeah. So there's a couple things going on with your questions there. So
yes,
I think part of it is, yes, you have to get comfortable with owning your failures. So, but I mean, honestly, I feel like that helps to keep me accountable,
Mm.
and just kind of say, hey, I mean, obviously there's other reasons for not wanting to do bad deals, but
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
like, I
But
don't
having to
want
share it is a great motivation as well.
to,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Cause I mean, I made a promise to myself and to all the people out there, that every single month I'm going to share what's going on, and it looks real. I mean, I've had some pretty ugly months.
Yeah.
I've had some pretty ugly deals. But yeah, so yes, it was a process kind of, getting over that, emotional hurdle of,
Hmm.
sharing, the good and the bad. As far as tenants and stuff, I will say most of none of my tenants know who I am.
Yeah.
So
That is true. You do have a layer of separation if your partner's kind of handling that side of the business.
right. And then I also don't put the address of the property on there.
Gotcha.
So
Okay. That is
yeah,
true.
there's
Actually, now that I'm
just,
thinking about it, you do name them, right? There, you name them instead of them having an address.
I just make up some like goofy name for each property.
Gotcha. That is
Yeah.
true. I forgot that specific note, but no, I think it's great what you're doing because it's extraordinarily informative. And I think one of my goals with sharing online is honestly to communicate to people that are trying to get into this business. Like, there's not as much money in real estate as you might think, specifically as it relates to ongoing income, right? That you
Yeah.
actually collect, the passive income side. I think that there is just, and I'm speaking extraordinarily generally here, but there's just this pervasive thought with new investors that your cash flow will be higher than it really will be. Like when you
Right.
buy
Right.
rental property or multifamily housing or single family rentals, whatever. And I think it takes a number of deals in this business and some seasoning, some lessons to be like, yeah, it is very expensive to own and operate multifamily housing rental properties,
Right.
because people forget about the heating systems, the roofs, the windows. A tenant moved out and trashed your apartment, and
Trashed
now
it.
you have
Yep.
6 weeks, 8 weeks of vacancy as you fix it up. Like, so I think that what you're doing in that respect is extraordinarily helpful, and that's what I try and do in my business as well. Is like, if you're going to get into this business, that's great, but you need to understand that it's not going to replace your W-2 salary if you're doing a couple of small deals here. I mean, we're not going to get there
Right.
for a while.
Exactly.
So, anyways, that's a bit of an aside, but I think that's a great component of what you're doing. Last question on the blog, because and we can end the episode on this one. But do you have any suggestions for listeners that maybe want to start telling their story online in some capacity, right? Maybe they want to start a blog, or maybe they want to start, writing on LinkedIn or something like that. They want to start sharing their story, sharing content. Any high level tips for them in terms of how you would approach that if you were to start doing that again, knowing what you know now, if you were to hypothetically start over, in terms of, doing that and actually starting to bring value to their business as a result?
So that's a good question. No one's ever asked me that. I would say establishing a schedule for how often you're going to be putting on new content. When I
Mm,
first started it, I was like trying to write articles and stuff. And that was cool. But I wasn't able to stick to that. So really the only thing I'm able to stick to now is the monthly numbers. So I do the monthly bookkeeping anyways. That's one of the things that the partnership pays me for. So, I do the monthly bookkeeping, and then I basically just export it out of QuickBooks and put it into my spreadsheet. And then I take screenshots and I put it up on the website. So,
hmm.
um, it's really not a big commitment for me now. But yeah, it's just establishing that monthly update. I mean, I have people now that, like, once it's like the second of the month, they're like, dude, where's your email?
Yeah, right. That is a great tip because, if you use like an exercise analogy, you're better off going to the gym, whatever it is, 3 times a week for a year than every single day for 2 months. And then you fall off the wagon for 2 months and then you go back on the wagon for so I think picking a schedule that you can stay consistent with is really important. I personally struggle with this, right? Like I've committed to like newsletter cadences and posting cadences that are aggressive, and then I have a hard time keeping up with them, and then I burn myself out and I just stop posting for a couple of weeks, and I have to get force myself to get back into the rhythm. Whereas if you just commit to a lower volume initially and you create that consistency and that habit, then you can start to slowly increase it over time. But I think that's a great tip. Well, Kyle, this has been a great episode. Obviously we've talked a lot about your blog, Real Life Rentals. But feel free to plug that here, share the URL, and share any contact information that you want to give the listeners if they want to reach out and learn more about what you got going on.
Yeah, so the website is realliferentals.com. And then on social media, the best way to follow me would be on Twitter. It's just at Real Life Rentals.
Yeah, you're pretty active on there too. I think, I believe we're connected on there as well.
Yeah.
I feel like I see your content pretty regularly. Twitter's great, man. I've been spending more and more time on Twitter. I think it's my favorite platform from like an educational standpoint. Like the quality of folks that are regularly tweeting is ridiculous to me.
I've actually made multiple connections. Like I have people's, cells, and I'll call them or text them just with like questions, or they'll ask me. So it is good.
Yeah, it's funny because Instagram's like, I'm most active on Instagram, but it's not a great educational platform. Like it's, short form video and whatever. Twitter, you get it's a little bit nastier in terms of the discourse on there.
Yeah.
But like you have, numerous folks with 1,000 plus, 5,000 plus unit portfolios, like the brightest minds in the business regularly contributing. So this is just a PSA to the listeners. If you're not on Twitter, I highly recommend it. Follow some people you respect. You're going to learn some things.
Right.
But anyway, Kyle, this has been great. Appreciate your time. And, let's certainly stay in touch.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode on the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. If you learned something new during the show, please consider sharing this episode with a friend, family member, or business partner, or just leaving a rating and review, as it helps the show get noticed by more folks. Catch you next week.